Hello, Internet. Daniel with Driving and Dragons. I was looking for something to react to, maybe something a little bit new, and this popped up from our boy Serving the Shiloh over at RPG Elite, and I just had to take a look at it because I'm sure it's going to tie back into Wizards of the Coast and various other RPG companies and their repeated assault on anything that does not fit their diversity, inclusion, and equity requirements. I know it's typically referred to as DEI, but I'm just going to go ahead and call it DIE. Diversity, inclusion, and equity, because when you start focusing on that, that's when your company and your brand start to die. But let's see what old Servant of Shiloh has to say about this. Like I said, I saw this one and kind of needed it, kind of had to pop up.
How should they have handled that situation? What is it that they should have said different than what they said? What they should have said in response to that denigrating and depraved statement is this. I know that some of you are looking at the thumbnail and going, oh, Servant, you were doing so well, not hitting those controversial topics. The channel was growing, man. Why are you doing this to yourself? Well, I have to. You guys should know me by now. I have to touch on those things that affect the tabletop RPG community. Remember, if you come to this channel, what is it that you get? You get tools, tips, tutorials, and what's that last one? Real talk about the tabletop RPG community and culture. We have to talk about this. This directly affects the tabletop RPG community and has for years now. So we've got to hit on this. I know a lot of you might think that I'm doing this video because, get some clickbait or whatever. I'm telling you right now, I've had this particular idea for a video for months. My One Ring campaign guys, I already told them. I told them months ago. I told them in the middle of summer. And it was before summer started that I came up with the idea.
Okay, so he's touching on a couple of things that are correct here, that are very correct. And it's actually one of the beauties of being a much smaller channel. He's obviously, I'm tiny, but he's not a very big channel. That's not the kind of size where the channel can be your primary income. And I think that if you're in a position like that, you kind of have a duty to do it. Because let's just take old Generic D, for example. Jenny D is bought and paid for by the tabletop role-playing game big boy industry. She is bought and paid for, actually first by Critical Role and second by WotC. And everything about her brand kind of relies on her access and tie to that. She can get away with some of her own political commentary on her Twitter page because she happens to fall in line with them. But let's pretend this is Bizarro World for a second, where let's say Jenny D is not down with something that the big TTRPG companies are doing. She basically has to shy away from it. And even in the OGL and Pinkertons and the other stuff that happened with Wizards of the Coast in the beginning of the year, she had to be dragged kicking and screaming by the people who subscribed to her, even though I'm sure she 100% agrees with some of the socialist nonsense that was being spewed during some of that. She had to be dragged kicking and screaming to talk about the OGL situation. And that's because she understood that talking about the OGL, even in the way she agrees with it, was something that was very, very dangerous to her brand, because all that sweet backdoor access, all that insider access that she gets to Wizards of the Coast and not the TTRPG community, but the D&D community, all that stuff would start going away, and it would be a serious impact to her bottom line. The same thing's going to hold true for any large channel, even like a Professor DM over at Dungeon Craft, who's very good about he's very good about staying apolitical, which is something he has to do, and something that, you know, you really should when you're talking about your tabletop role playing game hobby. We're not here purely for political commentary, so sometimes people bring it in when it's not warranted. But even he, who's very good at speaking his mind, has plenty of, you know, it's not, you know, his primary income to be Mr. the Professor Dungeon Master, but at the same time, his channel's big enough where he could see significant backlash if he's too direct in targeting some of this garbage. So even he has to hedge bets and be careful and whatnot, because when you have those bigger channels and you now have a significant revenue chain, especially if you have other people who are helping you with recording and production and all that stuff, you have to think about their jobs before you think about your you know, what you want to say on your channel, so to speak, in some cases. And one of the beauties of being a channel the size of RPG Elite, or being a Diversity and Dragons or something like that, or a Legion of Myth, that are in that size category, is A, they're big enough to have a presence where they can say something and be heard. They're small enough that you know that this isn't their primary thing. And if their YouTube channel gets collapsed and shut down, it's a minor nuisance. It may stop them from going out to a few, you know, going out to an extra concert or going on an extra vacation or something, but it's not something that's going to cripple their lifestyle. So when you have that ability to where you don't have employees who are getting their livelihood hurt, or it's tied directly to your livelihood to be the YouTuber or the content creator, you kind of have an obligation to say the quiet part out loud and to come out and say things that are going to ruffle some feathers, and not to, you know, bustle around the hedgerow when you're dealing with more controversial topics, because you don't have to worry about the externalities of it. So yeah, Serving and Shiloh, I give the applause for stepping up and talking about stuff that's important, even if it is if he's talking about what I think he's talking about. He's several months behind the news cycle, but it doesn't matter. I mean, good commentary is good commentary.
So I already knew that this was coming down the pipe. I just had to put it on the schedule. So it's not that I'm just trying to rustle up some stuff. It's that this is what we have to deal with. It is filtered down to the subculture of the tabletop RPG community, and you have to know how to deal with it and the people who espouse this nonsense into our hobby. If this is your first time coming to the channel, strap in. It might be a little bumpy here. You may find that, I'm not down with this dude. But give me a little bit of grace here, at least for the first part. We're going to talk about something we don't hear a lot of people talking about, not with any kind of concerted focus, right? We sweep it under the table. We might say something in passing. There might be people who rant about it, but nothing really said with a view to really, number one, looking at it for what it is, and number two, giving a solution to it. And that is the goal of this video. The goal of this video is to do just that. Again, if this is your first time coming to the channel, then let me at least introduce myself. My name is Servant of Shiloh. This place is RPG Elite. It's a place where I focus on putting the RP back in the RPG. And all of this goes and ties to that specifically. So today, I'm going to jump right into this, right off the cuff, y'all. And if you have any questions or things like that that you want to address after this whole video, go down, give them to me in the comments below, or send them to me in my email, and I'll get to them as soon as I possibly can. You know, I'm trying to do content on the channel all the time. So let's get into this right now. First, I need to set this up. So again, give me a little bit of grace here. I need to set this up. So let's do this first part. Well, first. So it was 4 years ago. It's before I actually had this channel. I'm pretty sure it was. And I was looking around and on YouTube, and so I was looking around for virtual tabletops. and I stumbled across a couple of videos. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And so I looked at these videos, and this company that these individuals are talking about is a company that I never even considered to actually use their product. I just didn't consider it. They weren't even in the running. I mean, as far as virtual tabletops is concerned, I went from Map Tools to Skirmish to Astral, and then now I'm with Foundry. I know a lot about virtual tabletop, and I know about Alchemy. I know about Arkenforge. I know about all of them. I keep up with all of those things, but this one wasn't even in the running, nowhere. But what was happening was very interesting to me because it had something to do with the culture once again and how it had infected the tabletop RPG culture. So instead of me talking about it, I'm going to let you see it. So I'm going to play these clips back to back so that you guys get a full Monty on what was going on back then. And I'll come back and I'll explain some other things that you might be perplexed about. Let's go ahead and let's roll the clips.
Jim Davis and I scheduled a meeting on May 22nd of 2017 with Nolan T. Jones of Roll20 to discuss Saber Dice because I had access to him. When I reached out to Nolan, we sat in our meeting and we had a Zoom conference call, maybe Skype, whatever. That's not important. And we talked. We gave him the pitch. Hey, man, look, here's what we want to do. I'm a big brand advocate for you guys. We have Dawn Forge and WebDM and Nerdarchy and Taking 20 and all of these really big content creators who already have built-in audiences. Let us, we want a virtual tabletop to sponsor the show. And I'm a big brand advocate for you guys. Do you want to be a part of it? And we gave him the pitch. And then I want to be very factual here. This is not an opinion. This is fact. I do not have a recording of this. I do, however, have a witness to this in Jim Davis of WebDM because he was in this meeting. And so both he and I listened to Nolan T. Jones look at us on camera face to face. And he said he did not want to do business with us because we were 5 white men.
Okay, so it's actually kind of funny here because it touches on my previous point, kind of proves my previous point in the fact that it's kind of against it. Here you have a relatively decent presence especially in the Dungeons and Dragons world. And he's having a conversation and he's talking about all these different, solid YouTubers that are already on these VTTs, and the VTTs don't want to work with him because, oh, you're a white guy and y'all are white people. Y'all are 5 white guys. We don't want to be tied to that. And it's kind of funny because it's like he's freed from the shackles to go out and bring this up and say it, because now he could get pressure on the outside to get his live stream sponsored potentially if there's some backlash. But before he'd had that Zoom conference call, do you honestly think he could have gone forward and said, man, they won't, look at how they don't like white men? Or better yet, if they had worked something out, say maybe he called Servant of Shiloh up and got Servant of Shiloh to be part of his stream game or something, so they have some diversity. Maybe he calls and gets a Jenny D to pop in and be the female purple hair on there, or whatever the case may be. He goes out and scrounges up some quote unquote diversity. Do you think he could actually mention these kind of things in his videos without, say, losing his VTT sponsorship? So all wrapped up in this little clip, you can hear the proof that's in the pudding when it comes to some of the larger channels, as well as why it's kind of important to bring this up, because otherwise it goes under the rug.
That is simply a statement of fact and cannot be construed as libel. After which Nolan proceeded to go on in this meeting, and he also told us, this is factual, the Roll20 was big enough and he didn't need us, and that Roll20 was the number one virtual tabletop in the market, and they were going to make lots of money without us.
It was an interaction prior to season 1 of Saber Dice, a collaborative effort between different YouTubers to play a game together. And we had reached out to various sponsors, people that we wanted to be involved, we wanted to use their products and show them off to our audiences. So we reached out for a digital platform to Roll20. And I will not forget this. The response that we got, 5 of the biggest YouTube channels related to tabletop gaming. Just point that out there. 5 very different individuals, each of us offering different aspects of the game, different types of playing, different play styles, different perspectives. The response we got was, we don't need another 5 white guys.
Now, some of you might have known in this. I mean, you probably were watching the videos and you were part of the whole situation, so you knew what the 411 was. And you might be wondering, okay, that was years ago. Why are you bringing it back up? And that's a good question. And the answer to that is because it's still here. That kind of abhorrent, depraved attitude is still here. And it has infected the tabletop RPG community. Plus, I haven't seen anything. I mean, I looked, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen anything where that comment was rescinded. So it was around the same time that there was this big brouhaha going on over on Reddit. That's not related to this specifically, because over there, some people got basically fired. Things got moved around. There were some apologies made, and that was it. But in this specific instance, and I looked for it, I never have discovered this comment being rescinded. When I'm talking about the comment being rescinded, I'm not talking about saying I'm sorry. Who cares about you being sorry? Sorry is telling me about your emotional state. I don't care about your emotional state. If you have transgressed against someone, my household, we don't use the term I'm sorry unless we're talking to somebody who has a loss in their family or something tragic has happened. But we don't use I'm sorry for when we have done something to somebody else that is wrong. We do not use that in my household. So if somebody's saying I'm sorry, doesn't matter, and I don't care, because when people say I'm sorry, I usually say, and? No, what we say in our household and what people should actually say is, please forgive me. See the difference there? And there's a difference in your mind too that happens. The difference is that you're telling me about your emotional state here, saying I'm sorry, but over here, you're actually taking responsibility for your transgression.
Just on a quick one there, I do disagree a little bit, but I also agree. One, in a lot of these cases, especially when it comes to these public things, I'm sorry is bunk. And it's bunk because you're not sorry. You're not sorry you did something. You're sorry you got caught. You're not sorry that you took an action. You're sorry that that action had consequences you didn't care for. And while I disagree that you shouldn't say I'm sorry, but it should be, I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to you for that. Is taking responsibility. I'm acknowledging that I've done something. I hope you can forgive me. That is accepting the responsibility and saying that and putting it on the other person that I cannot make this up. You have to give me that grace. And then it has to be followed up with action of how I can make it up or how I can try and correct the transgression. I'm not going to get too far off on this. I am a pretty devout Catholic, very traditional Catholic. And that is one big thing about the Catholic Church that has always been taught is it's not enough to simply ask forgiveness. It's not even enough to simply go out and show contrition. You have to do acts of contrition. You have to go out and make up for what you've done to other people or to others to the best of your ability. Yes, the Lord forgives you and you have a place in heaven, but you still have to pay the penance for the things you've done, which is why when you go into confession and you speak to the Father and you say, Father, forgive me, bless me, Father, I've sinned. Here's all the things I've done. And he says, yes, you're absolved of your sins. Go say this many Hail Marys or do this or do this. And it's not just, oh, go say some prayers. It's say 10 Hail Marys, focus on these things. Think about, being, say you go in and you confess about having, some wrathful behavior towards others. You've been, taking things out on people at home because you're stressed out at work. And they'll say, hey, say 10 Hail Marys slowly. And while you do this, you need to focus on the real cause of the problem and how you can have more grace towards that and what you can do to prevent it from happening in the future. And generally, the priest will also say, you need to go to these people and you need to make acts of contrition towards them to better the situation. You don't need it for salvation, but you do need it for the health of your soul. Same thing here. I'm sorry is meaningless without asking for forgiveness and also having some contrition and doing something to pay penance for that. The behavior has to change, and you have to do something to correct the damage you've done. And when you see these things like somebody coming out, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean it that way. We didn't mean to say, oh, y'all are dirty white men. We don't want to have you here. That's not it. And that's not enough. I'm sorry we got caught saying the quiet part out loud. You were supposed to agree with us that it would be racist for us to bring in these white men without enough other stuff. That not only is that not enough, that's not even starting, because like I said, they're not really sorry. And even if they are, it's got to be more than I'm sorry. It's got to be, hey, I'm sorry. I hope you can take it in your heart to still use our product, to give us the second chance and to forgive us. And on top of that, we're also doing these things to make sure it doesn't happen before. And we'd like to extend this to you to try and make up for some of the damage we did. That's the only time that it's actually meaningful.
Because only people who have transgressed need to be forgiven. But I've never heard anybody even say, I'm sorry, just to kind of reach out in this instance. Neither have I heard anyone say, please forgive me. And that's one that they probably wouldn't use anyway, because of how the phrase etymologically has been accepted widespread. And it shouldn't have been. And so I don't. Now, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're dealing with me, I'm not going to accept I'm sorry. So here's the situation. How should they have handled that situation? What is it that they should have said different than what they said? Well, I'm going to tell you. And it's going to surprise some people, of course, because it's out of the ordinary. But in this case, we don't need to be ordinary. We need to be right. What they should have said in response to that denigrating and depraved statement is this. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about, because there's no such thing as white men and I'm not one of them. See, now I got some of you guys right now thinking, what is he talking about? And the reason why you have thought this way is because you've been programmed. I'll get to that in a second. I have done 2 entire videos debunking the whole white race, black race thing. No such thing, in how it constantly gets presented to a culture. There's no such thing. And yet, here in the United States, this thing just keeps getting repeated. What you need to do is go over, and I'll have a link for those videos down in the description below, because I'm not going to go over all over again the very same things I went over in those videos. So go and look at those when you get done looking at this one. But what you've done, when you say that to them, or if they would have said that to this individual, they have totally pulled out from underneath them their whole premise. The whole premise of their statement has been now absolutely destroyed. And they either have to backpedal and explain why it is the case, or they need to double down and say, no, that it is, and keep, virtue signaling, which is normally what they do. Or they're just going to pull back and be like, what in the world are you talking about? And that is where you can use it as an education moment, which is, again, why I want you to go and watch the other 2 videos, because there's been research that's been put into that. That whole idea has been debunked for almost 3/4 of a century. And yet we continue to press that out as something that's a reality when it's not. If there's anything that's a social construct, it is that. That is a social construct.
There's a lot to agree with, a lot to disagree with in here. There is clearly a difference between races. There just is. It's as apparent as the color of your skin. That being said, it really shouldn't matter. It's like when you're going to call me a white man, what kind of white man am I? Because there's 100,000 different shades of white man. And it also seems that white man changes based on who we're talking about. Because, and let's remember that the news has brought us things such as the white Hispanic. He's white when he's doing something to a black person that they disagree with, or when he's doing something that they disagree with. He's Hispanic when he's saying something that agrees with them, or when he's being attacked by somebody else. We've seen this kind of BS across the board. And especially in America, it is very much a social construct where being white or being black is not so much about the color of your skin anymore as it is about your socio-political alignments. Because how many times have you seen, if you've ever grown up around, say, gone to school with a majority or a significant minority black school population, you'll hear, oh, you're acting white. You're acting white. Acting white. Oh, because he gets good grades, because he doesn't listen to hip hop, because he. Since when is it a racial thing to have a certain preference in music or a certain belief system, or to not idolize certain behaviors, or to want to do well and have an academic future? And it's like, you don't say that free safety who's got 5 or 6 tackles and, great coverage percentage, block passes, multiple interceptions, who happens to be a white person. You don't say they're acting black because he's playing a high athletic position on the football team. You don't say he's acting black. You don't say he's acting black because he's good at basketball. So why would you say it the other way around? So he's got some relevance in there. To me, honestly, and this is where these companies really screw up. The problem is that they actually are telling the truth. They're telling the truth because they're way off on that socioeconomic or that socio-political left, and they truly believe, oh, we don't want 5 white guys because 5 white guys is inherently evil. They're actually telling the truth, and that truth is comes to light as, yeah, y'all are racist. But if they wanted to do it the right way, what they should say is kind of the honest truth to where it started from, which is, hey, guys, I get it. It's between you, me, and the lamppost. I would love to sponsor your event. I would love to sponsor your program. But the issue is we are going to get eaten alive if I just put 5 white guys up there. We've got to have something else here. You know it and I know it. It's not just, hey, shoehorn somebody in. I can even help introduce you to some people who might be a good fit. But you and I both know that the second I put this out there, we're going to get roasted by your Indestructisoys and other people like that are producing content on YouTube, just like you are. You're going to get eaten. We're going to get gobbled up by a media that's going to militarize a base of the population that doesn't even play these games to come put me out of business. If we start putting our weight behind just 5 straight white guys. So let's see if we can come up with something. Do you know anybody who can help us at least have this patina so we don't have to face that backlash? It's still gutless, but at least there is an excuse for that. I could see the excuse for that being, hey, I agree with you. Like, take somebody like me. I might even say that if I'm going to say I'm running a virtual tabletop and I'm looking at sponsoring somebody, I might tell them, I might say, hey, dude, I don't agree with this. I'm with you guys. I don't think you should have to. I think you got a good product the way it is, and I'd love to stand behind that. But I got a whole crew of people, programmers and maintenance guys, software people, marketing people, etc., behind me that rely on me for a job. I need something to placate the woke mafia. What can we come up with?
The rest of the stuff that they say is a social construct is not. But this right here is. Let me tell you why. What's the best way to get a people to be divided and to always have a schism? Well, one way that you could do it is by labeling people with elements of things that are on the total opposite side of the spectrum, and to keep doing it over and over and over again until it becomes inculcated into the culture. Forgot who it was that said it. I want to say it was Hitler, who said, keep repeating the same lie over and over. People start to believe it as the truth. And this is one of those things. What do? How do they program you to keep that schism going? Well, they label you white, right? And okay, what's the total opposite side of the spectrum on that? It is black. And so what you do is you keep pushing forth that narrative, even though it's not true. It's not true at all. Again, I've already covered this in my 2 videos. But look at this right here. That's not black. I don't care what you say. That's milk chocolate, baby. That is not black. And you've got people labeling each other like that all across the spectrum. It's false. It's wrong. It's error. And yet people keep doing that all the time and then keep believing that stuff. But it's not true. It's the lie of a social construct that wants to constantly pit people against one another. And guess what? It's worked. And so for a person to make a self-loathing statement like that, because that person was a, quote, white man, and I use that word man very lightly, he fell right into what
Throwing some shade. Throwing some shade.
he's been programmed to fall into. It is what it is. It's the reality in which we live. And we have to deal with it. I am going to, in the next video, give my Caucasian tabletop RPG brothers, so to speak, some encouragement and some exhortation. Because some of y'all have believed this lie. Now, those of you who haven't believed the lie, hey, kudos to y'all, keep it up. But some of you have. You are drinking that Kool-Aid. They're playing a Jedi mind trick on y'all and gaslighting you to death. Okay, so in the next video, which won't be next week, it'll be next month, but I want to talk about this very thing and give you some encouragement and some exhortation, because y'all need it. And I'm giving it to you from this side of the table, being a brother, a little bit milk chocolate, and from what really is going on, yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you from that perspective. And really, it's not actually from that perspective, from a human perspective. But I'll wait until next time to get you on that. If you got...
So yeah, he's going to say like, share, and subscribe now. Smash the like button, which I fully agree with. You should like, share, and subscribe and smash the like button, because at the end of the day, Serving a Shiloh and RPG Elite is a solid channel that I really enjoy. He didn't put a lot of meat into that one. I'm assuming he's going to hold that for the second one, which when it comes out, we will jump back into. I thought it was important enough to jump on since he was bringing it up, and he's going way back, even further back than the incident I thought he was talking about. I thought we were going to hear about, once again, the good old fashioned, people that look like me, the straight white guys in the basement that need to go away comments from Wizards of the Coast. But no, he's straight up talking about YouTubers and, just the way this industry works. And there's a lot of truth to it. And it's important that if you are a small enough channel, you're a big enough channel to have some reach, but a small enough channel, or at least an insulated enough channel that you can't have others who you are responsible for hurt by by the industry itself and by bad actors from the outside who influence the industry. Then you need to speak out and say some things. And I think I'm probably going to have to do a video just for the posterity of it on what I feel about socio-political stuff in games. And I've said it in more than one video before in some of my prior videos that probably the most toxic player that you can have in your group is the activist player. I would rather have disruptive murder hobo, edgelord, rule lawyers who are intentionally trying to derail stories left and right, poking at all the invisible walls, obviously ignoring character hooks and doing the opposite. I would rather have that kind of player, a whole table of them, than one activist at my table. Because an activist is absolute cancer to your group and to the hobby as a whole, because a bad murder hobo typically doesn't run off a player to never play again. They just find different tables. They find different groups. They go to their game master and say, hey, can we get this person out of here? I mean, he's disruptive. I mean, he clearly is here just to be a troll. Activist players run people entirely out of the hobby. They cause them to put the books on a shelf and look at them 20 years later and blow the dust off of them with their kid and say, yeah, I remember when I used to play this game. I mean, it was kind of fun and it kind of went off kilter. That's what happens. That's what socio-political nonsense being dragged into your games does. And the activist player is about the only player that I personally think needs to be excised from the hobby entirely. Any other type of player, regardless of how toxic or disruptive, can be minimized and they need to be gate kept. They need to be kept out of tables where they don't belong. They need to be kept away from, say, newer players. They need to be kept in groups where their particular play style is more seen as a humor or is more contained by more experienced players or whatever the case may be. But you don't necessarily need to be like, hey, if we could sneak into this person's house, delete all of their PDFs and burn all of their books and melt all of their dice, we should. That is left entirely to these socio-political activist players. They need to be driven out of the hobby. They don't need to be just gate kept. They need to be bounced, like the guy who is way too drunk and is picking fights with every man and pinching every woman's butt at the bar. They need to be bounced out the door off the concrete and asked to never come back again. But anyway, we'll go on further from that. I'm going to find videos to react to. I'm going to bring some more stuff from the Cyber City Dodge campaign setting that I've got worked up and the adventure series that goes with it. I'm hoping that we get some people interested in that. And I'm going to try and include some stuff about how to adapt it to some other systems while I'm at it, just so that you don't have to be a near future post-apocalyptic or cyberpunk style game master to really get any value out of it. But look forward to hearing it. And I would love to have any kind of commentary you guys have and what you feel in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe. Please help me grow the channel a little bit. And I will see you guys next time.